To item 17. We got Catherine Harland. Hey, Catherine.
Good, thank you.
Wastewater networks.
Now, this is a network bylaw, and Catherine, I understand you're the chair. We had Councillor Brewer and member John Tamahere. Catherine, would you like to just give us a little bit of running dialogue? Helga, good to see you.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity to address you all this afternoon.
Yeah.
And with me on my left is Helga. Yeah, they know, you know Helga. And on my right is Ilza Gattelli from Watercare Services, who's worked on the bylaw and process with her colleagues. So today what we're recommending from the hearings panel for you to do is to adopt a single Auckland-wide water supply and wastewater network, and it's another important step in Watercare's mission to deliver safe, reliable and efficient water and wastewater services every day. So it's designed to protect the public networks from damage, misuse and interference, protect the environment and also the health of people using the networks. So taking back to December last year, you approved agreeing that Watercare should consult on the bylaw for revoking the legacy bylaws, that the different ones across the region that apply. So a special consultative procedure was followed with public notification, website information, availability at libraries, service centres, Watercare offices and so forth. Prior to public notification, there were briefings and discussions held with stakeholders, including local boards, Mana Whenua Kaitiaki Forum, Auckland Utilities Operators Group, Auckland Transport and others. And then as a result of the process, there were 14 submissions received by the 25th of February this year, and one late submission arrived, which the joint panel, as Mayor Len Brown pointed out, included Councillor Brewer, John Tamahere and my colleague Peter Drummond from Watercare Services agreed to consider. So I'd like to thank Cameron and John, who participated in the panel hearings and the useful input that they provided. Arising from the submissions, there were a number of amendments to the draft bylaw recommended, and those are set out in your paper, and I'm not going to go through them in detail. At Watercare's 29th of May board meeting, it resolved to recommend adoption of the proposed bylaw as modified and adding a few words for greater clarity, along with the revocation of the legacy bylaws, except for on-site wastewater disposal provisions. So I note and fully endorse the recommendations set out to the governing board that appear in your agenda and seek your support for its approval. I'd like to thank everyone involved in the process, including the Auckland Council officer staff and Watercare staff who have made it a process that is being very clear and transparent and collaborative. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Well done, Catherine. Councillor Cathy.
Can you just explain to me about restricted works, what that means? I'm thinking of the pollution of the dam at Hunua by herbicide that leached from the forest. Would that be a restricted activity? Can you just, I've looked up restricted activity here and it refers me to another part of the bylaw. It'd be quicker if you tell me. Restricted works. It's referring me to clauses 8, 3 and 4 of this bylaw.
I might get Ilza to try and address that.
The restricted works are intended to focus on works within the vicinity of the network that could do direct damage to the network itself. However, In that case, there's another clause that talks about contamination of the water supply, and if you give me a moment, I can draw your attention to it. Clause 11 talks about protection of water quality. So I would think that that potentially could fall under clause 11(1), where no person may contaminate or pollute any raw water source.
But when it's accidental contamination, is it a restricted activity? If it's a restricted activity, it will prevent the contamination.
Yeah, please.
It's not really a restricted work if it's.
But the application of herbicide is not a restricted activity near a watercourse?
What was the question?
I'm not sure how we would.
It says the restricted works are works which will or are likely to damage or adversely affect the operation of the water supply network or the wastewater network.
Well,
So
if I was wanting to apply herbicide to a forest near a watercourse, I'd have to get permission because it's. That's my question. Is it a restricted activity? Because the last time it didn't happen.
certainly wasn't the intention to apply in that case, but it does potentially provide a legal tool if that were necessary.
It would be, the application though is covered, and it's not that it's directly going into our water source.
Councillor, I think clause 11(1) is actually the operative clause. It indicates that no person may contaminate or pollute any water, etc., or do any act likely contaminate. So that do any act likely would then obviously depend on the facts. If such activity occurred and it was likely to contaminate, then it would be prohibited.
Isn't it easier just to put an application of herbicide as a restricted activity near our water courses?
Clause 8(4) actually had more to do with the construction, etc. In other words, it protects the integrity of the pipe and the network as such. It's more to do with when construction occurs and one may accidentally, therefore, damage it. And that's what the table that follows indicates.
Okay. Councillor Cathy?
No, it doesn't do it for me. Why don't we, under section 11, why don't we say something like the use of herbicide near a water course or dam is a restricted activity? That section you're referring me to is after the fact. It's protecting the water supply. No person may contaminate. Well, you don't mean to contaminate if you use herbicide near a water course, but that could be one of the consequences, as happened at Hunu.
But again, it's likely to contaminate. So if you were to do such an activity in such circumstances that's likely to contaminate, it's prohibited.
Right. Councillor Wayne.
Yeah, first of all, I just support Councillor Casey in terms of adding herbicides or chemicals to the list of restricted works. I'd suggest it's one of the most common items that has the possibility of contaminating the water supply at source. So I'm supportive of Councillor Casey. And secondly, under restriction on water use, 12(1), where the council considers that its ability to maintain an adequate supply of drinking water, I just wonder why we refer to drinking water. I'd suggest it's water in general that we would be concerned about. Water is used for a variety of things aside from drinking, and many of those things are particularly important. They go to businesses, they go to use in horticulture, a whole range of things. So I just wonder why we have adequate supply of drinking water. I could list a whole range of things that water is used for that are very important aside from drinking.
This bylaw is focused on the water supply network broadly. Everything that Watercare's network provides water for is really the focus of this particular bylaw.
I understand that. So why the reference to adequate supply of drinking water? Why not just leave it as water?
Drinking water has a different definition than just water, because there's raw water. Drinking water is stuff that
Well
can
then,
be consumed.
why not use the word potable water? If we're
well-
talking about definitions, well, this is a bylaw that we need to get right.
Well, hang on.
Potable
well,
water
well,
would generally
point of order,
be the
Mr.
expression.
Yeah, councillor. Yeah, just hang on. So, councillor Wayne, one of the things that I've tried to encourage on a consistent basis is if you've got issues, particularly on technical detail, you should be in touch with the officers. You've got to.
I was given my mind to other things today. too.
Well, I can relate to that. But councillor Wayne, this just wasn't about today. This agenda's been out for a while. And so, look, one of the things that I wonder, rather than try and rewrite what has been reasonably agreed, particularly around a very technical issue, is that you take the discussion offline and see whether or not your concerns can be, hang on, George, your concerns can be addressed. Right? So I'm suggesting that, councillor Wayne, because it might be a bit hard to rewrite what sounds to be a very technical proposal.
Oh, it's pretty simple.
Huh?
I don't mind having a talk offline.
Good man.
That's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Chris.
This Chris, thank you. Look, I'm happy to second. Maybe Councillor Brewer,
Yep.
you want to move it?
Please.
But I don't. It's a bylaw that's been through quite an exhaustive process. It's been through a hearings process, and though none of us were privy to that, Councillor Brewer, if needed, might like to
Yeah,
reflect
I'm
on
happy to
that.
talk on this.
But while I
My
hear the words of Councillor Casey and Councillor Walker, I'm comfortable with the words, particularly under section 11, the protection of water quality, and I'm clear on what 8 means. It's about physical works. That's what that section's about. But that's my take on it. I'm comfortable with the very thorough process that this has been through. I wasn't around the table, but Councillor Brewer might like to tell us what was around the table.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, councillor Cam.
Oh, look, I would just like to add your comments as to the process that this has gone through, that it came to us back before Christmas, and it's gone through a special consultative process. It's been advertised. Admittedly, it's as dry as chips, but nonetheless, you've done your best to reach out to local boards with presentations. The Mana Whenua, Kaitiaki Forum, and Auckland Transport and others. And I think the most telling thing, Mr. Mayor, and this now being signed off by the Water Care Board, is that it's all about the network and protecting the network, and this is the final phase of the total integration when we revoke these bylaws from 1 July, the legacy bylaws. And the fact that that we had those submissions, I think were there 14 or 15, that the Water Care went away, and then these submitters are not presenting to us today, or didn't even present to us on the hearings panel, because Water Care went away with them. Some of them were caught up on pricing, some of them on access issues and rights, but Water Care laboriously worked through those processes to a point that in the end they were all happy, some of them big industry, some of them small individuals, with the outcome of what is a very technical network bylaw here. And in fact, the only person, and Water Care was very encouraging that they come through, and because we'd set up a panel, please come and have your say, but they said, no, we're happy. The only person that actually did come through was one individual who was actually outside the scope of this very narrow scope here on this network bylaw, but nonetheless, Chair Harland gave him the ability to catch a bus and come and see us and spend half an hour talking about issues, every issue other than what was actually at stake here. So I just want to reiterate the long process that has been 9 months in the making, and the fact that the Watercare have reached out to big operators, small operators, and worked really closely to get to a situation now where we only had one hearing, and that was an irrelevant one. I think we should take a lot from that, particularly when they've given mana whenua and local boards a really good slice at this too. So the process was exemplary, and I certainly commend this to you, again, as a bylaw that successfully completes the integration of Auckland's water and wastewater network. So it's historic in that nature. So this is the final piece of the kind of the Watercare integration jigsaw.
Councillor George?
Well, excuse me, well, as people that have been involved in the hearings panel and that know that on occasions matters of a technical nature especially are dealt with offline, and that obviously has happened here. But, you know, for Councillor Walker to start micromanaging now, it's not possible. If we have to vote it down and send it back to the Watercare, and I don't think that's what we want to be doing here today. So let's just move it and move on. Thanks.
Pretty sure that's what I decided, Councillor George.
Well, it sounded like
Thank you.
Councillor Walker was...
Right, everyone else have to say?
Just raising valid points, George.
Yep, that's it, thank you.
Or be on the panel.
Why are we here?
Quiet.
I wonder sometimes.
Right, so we'll
I
put...
wonder the water you've been drinking today,
We've
Wayne.
got moved in a second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, passed.
No,
No.
recorded.
Okay,
Recorded
okay.
also.
Item 18.
Move 18. A to try.